Hi guys, my name is Haley Reed. Today, this is going to be for my micro-teaching lesson plan, and since I don't have any students to teach to, I will just be kind of going through my lesson plan and reading you the steps and telling you some of the materials that I'm going to be using and my objectives and all that fun stuff that you're going to need for this lesson plan. And like each time I will try to teach how I would in a classroom, but since there's no students, it is a little bit harder since there's no interaction there. But for my lesson plan, it's going to be for the 5th grade, and it's going to be a math class covering measurement. And for this lesson plan, it's going to cover the standard of the MA533C, and that is to generate conversions within the customary and metric systems of measurement. For the objective of this lesson plan, it is for students to be able to predict and explain features of shapes that are scaled by factors greater than 1. So, the vocabulary for this lesson is what I would start off with for my class. I would tell them or ask them if they knew the definition of what a scale or what scale is. And if they didn't know, I would tell them that scale is like when you take a bigger object and compare it to what it is in real life and scale the measurements. So if you're asking if a house is like 3 centimeters by like 5 centimeters and on like a piece of paper, how, and then give them numbers, to compare it to find the actual real life measurements of the house. That's what a scale would be. And then I would add, the other vocabulary word would be a downscale. And I would do the same thing, ask them if they knew. If they didn't know, I would give them the definition, and then factor, and it'd be the same for all 3 vocabulary words. Some of the materials that I would need for this lesson are 2 pictures. I don't have 2 pictures, but I do have one for you today. The 2 pictures, one to model and an identical item from real life. So like say some keys. You could have a key and then a picture of a key. But what I have for you today is a picture of a pumpkin, since it's Halloween, and then it's not real life, but it is a pumpkin. And then you're going to need 2 paper cutouts of regular square, one with 4-inch sides and the other with an 8-inch side. So let's go on. So for my introduction, I'm going to show my class the 2 pictures that I will have ready for them, and then the models of each one. I will ask them which is the real item and allow my students to respond to me and tell me why, that is the real item. Then I will reveal which picture was a model, and then I would note how a model is a version of something but wouldn't be very realistic if it weren't up to scale, or have the same features in proportion to the real thing or real item that you show them. I will explain that it establishes features in proportion to scale, meaning to multiply all of the dimensions by the same factor in order to get the real life measurement of the picture. Then after all the introduction is done, for the body of my lesson, I will explain that today's lesson will really focus on scaling regular figures, showing my class the paper cutout with the 4-inch sides. Then I'll show my students another square with the 8-inch side and have my class turn and share with a partner how both squares compare to one another. Then once they're done discussing how they compare and how they're similar, how they're different, and like all that, I will allow several students to share their ideas with the whole class and tell my students that the 2 squares are to scale, which means the smaller square's side length has been scaled by 2 to create the larger square. After that, I will allow my students to turn and tell a neighbor again how they might explain this idea in their own words. So I'm really pushing them to come up with an idea in their own head to maybe help them comprehend what I'm teaching them a little bit better in their own words. When they build up a definition that they understand themselves, that you're teaching them, it sticks with them a little bit longer and it will make more sense in the long run. So, when I have students that are have a higher educational level, I will make the lesson a little bit harder for them. I will give them tougher questions or a tougher assignment or something in that sort, so that it's still pushing them to their full potential and they're still learning, but they're still learning the same concept that the rest of the class is learning. For the lower level educational learners, I will have helpers with them throughout the lesson to make sure they are understanding as we go. And if they needed further help after the lesson is done, I would go around and I would help them through their assignment, but I will also change the assignment for them too, so it's not as difficult as the higher level students. I will kind of scale it down so it's more at their level of understanding. So it still will push them, but it's not so hard that they're not going to understand it and get very frustrated. And with the average learners, I will just give them the lesson that I had planned. They'll get tough questions. I will push them, but not questions that are going to be so easy that it's not a challenge at all. So it is still pushing them to learn. If I have any disabilities in my class, like an English language learner, I will have a para with them throughout the whole class, if I have one available. If not, like I said earlier, I would sit down with them after I got done teaching my lesson to the whole class and then further explain. And if they needed more help after that, I would give them more time to get stuff figured out. I would also use more pictures and symbols in my lesson and their assignment, so they understand more of what, if they didn't know what a pumpkin was, I would show them a picture of what a pumpkin, and then they would know a pumpkin is that in the English language, if that makes any sense. I cannot say this word to save my life. Okay, I can't say it. I apologize. But for the enrichment side, the students can make scale diagrams of non-regular angular shapes like rectangles, triangles, trapezoids, and scale those to each other. And then the support students can start off by practicing upscaling regular shapes by 2 and moving on to 3 and 4 times. They can just keep bumping up, so it's more difficult as they start to get the hang of it. For my assessment, I will show my students two shapes, and I will label them A and B. My A shape is scaled by a factor of 5 to create B. And then I will ask students to show fingers that show the scale factor used from shape A to create shape B. And after that, I will give them a worksheet. I do not have a worksheet drawn up, but it would be very similar to the assessment that I would do after I had taught all the lesson. And it would also have something to do with scaling shapes and all that, like I talked about in the lesson too. I guess that is really all of my lesson, but if I wanted to do like an activity with it, I would, if we had extra time, I would allow students to make their shape, make a shape, and then I would have them upscale it or downscale it, their choice, and give them time to do that. And once they have their regular sized shape and their upscaled or downscaled shape, I would have the groups come, like one group at a time. I would have them come up to the class and have the class try to solve what they upscaled it by or downscaled it by, and we'll move through the groups. So it's a little extra practice, but it is more fun and more memorable for those students in the classroom. And before, I forgot to mention this, before I allow them to go off on their own and use scissors and paper and all that for their activity, I will discuss with them the proper manners of using scissors and how we are supposed to be careful with the scissors and quiet and working and not being distracting to others. But that is my lesson plan, and that is kind of what I would do in my classroom with this lesson in a very small form. It would be very much longer. This would actually be close to a 45-minute lesson plan if I had students out in front of me and we're having the interaction between the two. But thank you very much.